It's 7:15 in the morning in Oslo. A 5-year-old named Henrik is already outside. Not because his parents told him to go, because it's simply what you do here. There's a light frost on the grass. He doesn't notice. He's building something with sticks near the garden fence, a trap for imaginary animals, and he's been at it for 20 minutes without once asking for help. His mother can see him from the kitchen window. She's on her second coffee. She's not watching closely. She doesn't need to. Now picture a different morning, same time, in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. A 5-year-old named Tyler is at the breakfast table. His iPad is on. His mother is checking the school app. His backpack is half packed, and somewhere between the granola bar and the permission slip, everybody in. That house is already behind. Same age, same morning. 2 entirely different childhoods. Here's what most people assume when they see that contrast. They assume it's cultural, that Nordic countries are just different, colder, quieter, more laid back, and that whatever works there couldn't possibly translate. But developmental scientists have been studying Nordic parenting for over 50 years, and what they've found isn't cultural magic. It's a set of specific, repeatable practices, things any parent, anywhere can understand and begin applying. 5 of them specifically. And when you see all 5 together, the picture becomes very hard to argue with. In the next 10 minutes, we're going to walk through each one. I'll share the science behind it, the Nordic name for it where one exists, and what it looks like in real life. Fair warning. Number 5 is the one most parents completely miss. It doesn't show up in parenting books. It's not on any checklist, but researchers who study child well-being say it may be the single most important variable of all. Let's start with number 1. The first thing Nordic parents do differently is something Finns call Leikki. Leikki simply means play, but not organized play, not scheduled play, not educational play with a developmental purpose. Leikki is free, unstructured, child-directed play, where the child decides what happens, how it unfolds, and when it ends. In Finland, children as young as 3 are regularly left to play alone or with other children for extended periods, with adults nearby but deliberately not involved. No supervision of the rules, no narration of what they're doing, no gentle suggestions about what to build or pretend. This makes a lot of Western parents uncomfortable. It feels like absence. But a landmark study published in Child Development in 2020, following 3,000 children across 8 countries, found that children who experienced high rates of unstructured free play showed significantly stronger executive function by age 6. That means better impulse control, better working memory, and better ability to manage frustration. Skills that predict academic performance more reliably than early academics themselves. The insight is counterintuitive but consistent. The less adults direct the play, the more children develop the inner tools to direct their own lives. When Henrik builds his stick trap alone in the frost, he isn't wasting time. He's building the cognitive architecture he'll use for the rest of his life. The second practice has a name too, Ulkoilu. It means outdoor time, and in Nordic countries, it's treated less like a preference and more like a physiological requirement. There's a saying in Norway that Scandinavian parents repeat so often it functions almost as a law. There is no bad weather, only bad clothing. Finnish daycare centers send children outside every single day, regardless of temperature. -10 degrees Celsius? They go. Rain? They go. The forest kindergarten, where children spend the majority of their day in natural outdoor settings, is not an alternative model in Scandinavia. It's mainstream, and the research behind this is striking. A study in the Journal of Environmental Psychology found that time in natural outdoor environments reduces cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, by an average of 21%. In children who are chronically stressed, that's a number that can change the trajectory of their emotional development. But there's more than cortisol. Unstructured outdoor play specifically teaches children to assess risk, to look at a tree and decide whether to climb it, to navigate slippery ground, to negotiate with another child over who controls the territory. These are skills that cannot be simulated indoors, and researchers consistently find that children who engage in outdoor risk play develop higher frustration tolerance and better conflict resolution by school age. The muddy boots at the door aren't evidence of neglect, they're evidence that childhood is happening. Before we get to number 3, I want to flag something. The next 2 practices are the ones that most directly challenge the assumptions parents carry into child-rearing. If you've ever felt pressure about your child's academic readiness or about your own emotional state as a parent, stay with me, because what the science says about those pressures is not what most people expect. The third thing Nordic parents do differently is something that, on the surface, looks like a risk. In Finland, formal academic instruction doesn't begin until age 7. Before that, no phonics drills, no math worksheets, no structured reading preparation. Children spend their early years in play-based environments where curiosity, movement, and social learning are the entire curriculum. And yet, Finnish 15-year-olds consistently rank among the highest in the world in reading, mathematics, and science, according to PISA 2023. Data. How is that possible? Because the early years aren't a head start on academic content, they're a foundation for something more important, the child's relationship with learning itself. When a child is never forced to sit still and perform tasks they are developmentally unready for, they don't learn to associate learning with failure, with boredom, or with the anxiety of disappointing an adult. They stay curious. And curiosity, once intact, is one of the most powerful cognitive assets a human being can have. The Nordic model doesn't delay learning. It protects the conditions that make learning sustainable for a lifetime. The fourth thing is the one that most parenting resources skip over entirely, because it's about parents, not children. Nordic societies have built their infrastructure around a single neuroscientific insight. Children cannot regulate their emotions in isolation. They co-regulate, meaning they borrow their emotional stability from the adults around them. A child's nervous system literally calibrates itself against the nervous system of the parent in the room. This isn't metaphorical. When a parent is chronically anxious, that anxiety transmits, not through conversation, but through tone of voice, tension in the body, and the low-grade urgency that fills a household when adults are afraid. Nordic countries understand this, which is why they've constructed systems, long paid parental leaves, affordable childcare, universal healthcare, strong public education, not as employee benefits, but as parental nervous system supports. The result is that Nordic parents carry measurably less fear. Less fear about money, less fear about the future, less fear about whether their child will be okay. And children raised in low-fear households develop fundamentally different stress response baselines than children raised in high-fear ones. When we talk about raising calmer kids, we are, always inevitably, also talking about calmer parents. The Nordic model doesn't separate the two, and that brings us to number 5. This is the one. The fifth thing is the subtlest, and the one that researchers say matters most. Nordic parenting culture treats children as people. That sounds simple. It isn't. In most cultures, the relationship between adult and child is implicitly hierarchical. The adult commands, explains little, and expects. Compliance. Structure flows downward from authority. In Nordic households, the structure is still there. Nordic parents are not permissive parents, but the structure is built on something different: genuine respect for the child's perspective. Nordic parents explain their reasoning to children. They ask for opinions. They have open conversations about difficult things: loss, conflict, fear, failure, without managing or suppressing the child's response. They treat children's emotions as real data, not as inconveniences to be corrected. What this builds, over time, is a child whose sense of worth isn't tied to performance, a child who doesn't need to achieve to feel loved, a child who isn't quietly, constantly afraid of disappointing the adults in the room. And that, according to decades of developmental research, is the single most reliable predictor of adult psychological health, a secure, unconditional sense of being valued as a person, not for what you accomplish. Nordic cultures have made a deliberate, collective choice about what childhood is for. Not for building resumes, not for gaining competitive advantage, but for building humans who are whole. 5 practices, different names, different contexts, but one shared conviction underneath all of them. Leikki, independent play. Ulkoilu, outdoor time. Delayed academics. Co-regulation. Autonomy respect. They all begin from the same place, the belief that children are not problems to be managed or projects to be optimized. They are people in the process of becoming. And the most important thing a parent can do is protect the conditions that allow that process to unfold on its own terms. None of this is a perfect system. Nordic winters are long and hard. Screen time is rising there just as it is everywhere. The expectation of early independence can feel isolating for children who need more closeness. But the direction of the research is consistent. Cultures that give children room to play, to struggle, to be outside, to be emotionally real, to be genuinely respected, produce children who are more resilient, more curious, and more psychologically secure. And that is something every parent in every country can begin moving toward. If you want to go deeper on one of the practices we covered today, specifically how Finnish parents use Ulkoilu and sisu to raise children, without punishment or yelling, that video is linked for you right now. It's the most watched on this channel, and for good reason. Subscribe if this kind of science is useful to you, and well, see you in the next one.